All right, welcome to the April 2022 Disability Ministry Video Roundtable. And our topic this month is planting a church with disability in mind. I think that's the actual title. But the idea is, and this is something that regardless of whether or not you're planting a church right now, this is just really good information for all of us to keep in mind. But the idea is, how do we start kind of turn that upside down? So instead of taking a church and then trying to make it disability friendly, how do we turn that upside down and start kind of the whole universal design idea? How do we start with disability in mind and so that it's a welcoming place for all? So I know we have a lot of regulars on here and we have some new people as well. And where did she go? Let's see. Oh, there she is. Kristen is actually here, who has some experience with this. So she'll be a great person to kind of walk us through this. But I want everybody to be able to ask questions, share their experience. So this can be a good time of learning for all of us. So let's start. Kristen, do you want to kick off and just tell us a little bit about, what brought us to this conversation? Because it was a conversation that she and I had that kind of kicked off the topic for this. So Kristen, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. I am in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, a little rural out here, and my husband and I are part of a church plant in Westchester, which is about an hour closer to Philly, I guess, to us. So it's a little more urban out there. And when we were deciding that we wanted to do this with the church plant, my passion has always been just supporting families and inclusion in a lot of ways. And so my professional life was in human services, and I also ran a disability ministry for a church about 10 years ago. And so when we stepped into this, my first question was, how inclusive do you want to be? Because there was just no stopping it for me. It's just going to happen, whether they liked it or not. And so when we did that, it was, the pastor was incredible. He's very much in the realms of mental health, recovery, like lots of things that were just beautiful, compassionate ways of running church. And so that kind of, with Beth and I, we were talking about how I started just making sure that our presence was known in the community of anyone. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that we just started off with that were, like, for instance, we just said, we're going to volunteer at the local camp that is just a day camp and summer camp for kids with disabilities. And so it was like, we just needed them to know that we're here and we want to be part of your community. And so that was kind of the first step, I guess, that we took in that little realm.
All right, thank you for that little intro there. Couple things before, so I want to talk a little bit about what you said, but also I forgot to introduce myself. So Beth Golick, Key Ministry, and my colleague Catherine Boyle, who's our Director of Mental Health Ministry, is on here. She's a red background. Hi, Deb Peterman, good to see you. All right, so what I love about what you're saying, Kristen, is you were kind of reaching out into the community and just like, hey, this is just who we are. This is what we do from the very beginning. So let that be a lesson to all of us, just about kind of just doing life in your community. So I love that. I love that. All right, who would like to go next to share? Or Kristen, if you want to share kind of what happened next in your story. I'm looking around to see, raise your hand, do the chat.
Okay, if not, I can certainly.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't want to flood anyone's writing down things, but yeah, that was really the first step for us. And then from there, we got very much involved with the school district. And so we kind of met, certainly the first thing that we did when we were launching our website was we need to have a tab that's very specific that we have a disability ministry, and it's super simple. It's just, if you want to contact, if you want more information. And then it's a church plant, so we don't have our own building, we rent a space. And I walked through and found every single thing that would hinder anyone from going anywhere in the building. And that was our key. Like I was definitely critical. I went through everything to say, is there a lift? Is it operational? How are the elevators? Can people get on the stage with a wheelchair? even just loudness of the space. Can we turn down volume in different areas of the building? Like all those different steps that I actually learned from Inclusion Fusion Live a few years ago, to be able to say this is the space is absolutely inclusive as well. So that was the first couple steps. And then it was getting involved with our community, finding teachers. I got into the special ed department, learned people's names, got their email addresses, and kind of went from there.
Okay, I love it. So again, what I'm hearing is you worked really closely with the school district, not just to put the word out, but also then to recruit volunteers. Is the space that you use, is it a school building?
No, it's actually a performing arts center.
Oh,
And
okay.
so they have to be ADA compliant, but also that there's speakers throughout the entire building. And so we could have specific rooms that if there were kids with sensory needs or anything, or families, adults with any kind of needs, that we could make sure that the volume could be adjusted for things like that too. So yeah, it's not a school.
But is it, so I know I've done some church consulting with churches that the space they're using is our movie theaters. And they're doing their children's ministry like in that space between the first row seats and the screen, and which kind of seems like a nightmare to me, but that wasn't the case for you? You had do you have like classrooms or?
We do. They have a like practice space in the arts center. And so there's even like it's fun because I don't have to really decorate much. They have all their backdrops from their old shows are lining up the space with their dressing rooms and everything. So even just so it is downstairs, but there's an elevator and then there's a ramp that gets to it. So it's super easy for anyone in a wheelchair to come down. And then we just have the ability there's bathrooms down there because there's dressing rooms. So it was just a no-brainer that it was easy for kids and families to get up and down places. And so with that, there's a few different bathrooms actually. There's ones that are more like family style bathrooms that were down there in the kids space. And then there's ones that are, it's just like a school where there's multiple stalls and things, and there's no doors to get in and out. Like it was a no-brainer for that.
Yeah, that's great. I like how you did the walkthrough, and something that I learned doing a walkthrough even in my own building is take some people with you who like that's their everyday life. So whether they're in a wheelchair or vision impaired or whatever it is, and allow them to show you what it's like to navigate. And I like how you were also not just looking at like the physical disability barriers, but you were looking at things like sound and, that type of thing. So, yeah. Does anybody else have any, just pause for a second. Does anybody else have any examples of having done something similar in their church environment, doing a walkthrough or using a checklist, or bringing somebody along to help you?
I've done that for years in churches I've been part of, but also in churches I've consulted with. And I typically take either my daughter who uses a wheelchair or one of my interns who has CP with me. And I just follow them through the building and kind of take notes as they go.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so firsthand experience, I think, is the best. I know as far as checklists go, I know Johnny and Friends has a checklist, Ability Ministry has a checklist. So these are things you can go to their websites and download and then actually walk through your building. Yeah, and Greg, you have something to say.
Yeah, I was just going to share that for some of our walkthrough type feel things, we, talking about intellectual disability, having a parent, an adult caregiver who is very familiar with someone's needs has been really helpful for us too. I mean, some of the people we know really well and we already know a lot of the answers, but going into a new space with someone else and just kind of seeing how they're experiencing it in that way, even at that intellectual disability, can be really, really helpful, and it makes us think creatively in a lot of ways.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. And then just because we're on this topic right now, and this is not necessarily church plant related, but having good signage, and I know you're in a temporary space, so that's a little bit different, but having good signage is really important, particularly for people who may have anxiety, like just being able to know how to find a restroom without having to talk to a person could be like a huge thing for a family. So, you know, signage doesn't have to be super expensive, but that's something that's really important to think about in your church environment. Let's see, I was going to say something else, and what was it? I don't remember. I'm just so excited. I'm seeing so many people that are coming to IFL 2022 on this call right now. So, all right, Kristen, would you like to share a little bit more for us then?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback, we have a gentleman who is hard of hearing and has like a I guess gradually getting worse as years go on, but he's 16 now. And so his father, he has a cane that he walks with a little ball on the end of it. And he has a Braille machine that prints out, a Braille printer from his school district. So that was another portion of this that was, the more you can get involved with teachers and aides, the better, because then what I've done is every week I email him a PDF of the lyrics for the songs that we're singing on Sunday, and he prints it out in Braille so that he can actually sing along. And just little things that will touch your heart, because I know we're all in the same passion, right? That the week that we started doing this, his father said, I haven't heard my son sing in church in 5 years. And so just hearing him sing was huge. So even things like that, just to get to know what are the needs. And then I didn't even know that he could do that with lyrics. Like it was unheard of. So I said, wait a minute, let me talk to his teacher and see what we can really use. And so he's even been able to get up on stage and read Braille for reading scripture. He's got an incredible memory. And so he just gets excited because he gets to be on stage, you know? So even the little things that you can say, let's use all of your tools that you have from school and transfer it over to church. And that meant a lot to his teachers too, because now he's got volunteer hours that he's doing that are required, and he can be involved and participate in ways that he never used to be able to do.
Awesome. All right. So I'm hearing a couple things here. So first of all, and again, like you all know this, but in case there's somebody who's watching this video that this maybe is a new thing for them, the fact that he is serving and he's able to use his gifts and he's up there on the stage reading scripture, like that is that's our goal. Okay. This is not, we're not serving, ministering to, this is ministering with. And so that's really awesome that, you know, that is happening, and that's what we should be striving for. Again, I love that you're working with the school district, and anytime, I mean, in my opinion, anytime we can be like, families can experience that consistency between school and home and church, whether it's like, let's say you have a student that maybe has some behavioral issues. If you can work with the school district to use the same, you know, visual schedules or the same words or whatever it is, and have that consistency between school and home and church, that's going to really benefit, you know, it's going to benefit everybody. And I know that's not always doable, but when you can have that kind of relationship with a school district or with a family, some really amazing things can happen. So cool. Thank you. Any thoughts or questions so far? I'm looking around. All right, Kristen, anything else to share?
Gosh, I could go on for hours. This is exciting. Well, one of the other things too that I had written down that was a game changer for some families is that I asked to see the IEP or ISP that we're working with. And my last job was with adults, and I oversaw some group homes for adults with disabilities, and just getting to know what that looks like, and even asking the right questions or any questions about what the goals are. And so us being able to transfer the goals that they're working on in either school or in their different realms, to be able to say, we want to work on it too, so that church is not just a place where you kind of all the rules go out the window, but but we get to do things consistently too. It kind of goes with what you were saying about visual schedules, or also understanding like the PEC system, which is picture communication. And so even that was a lot of families are, because they've been turned away by church so many times, that when you say words like, I want to see what your kids' goals are, or I want to know what you're working on with your day program, or whatever it is, then just to be able to know that you know those words and you understand it is a huge checkbox on parents' lists.
So our children's ministry at my church uses Boardmaker a lot. And so any of you who are coming to IFL 2022, if you want to stop by the children's ministry spotlight between 3 and 4 o'clock, you'll get to see that in action, because we'll have examples of the materials that we use and how we use that in the classrooms. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that.
That's great.
All right, Deb, would you like to share, please?
Yeah, hi. It's so good to see you. To see that you've joined the same club. Hello, all. I'm not new to disability ministry. I've started the Vineyard Columbus Disability Ministry 28 years ago, and have since recently passed the baton on to an amazing person. I wanted to make sure that changeover will be in my lifetime, not them all of a sudden shutting down the ministry when I'm gone. But the really cool thing I wanted to tell you is that I am now working for a non-residential independent living center. There's 12 in Ohio, and an amazing grant from DODD has a specific grant called Ohio Family Network. And this will impact you guys in several ways. How many of you have heard of Charting the Life course? Yep. Okay, so this is great information. And then, so just try to make it really short. I've been in the secular realm now. There are Christians in the secular realm. When I started disability ministry years ago, we had no resources like this. But things I've learned along the way is nurturing those community resources, and to find out if someone in your church is connected that can be your support, behind the scenes support person. Maybe they don't want to do it on Sunday morning, but they sure know what's happening in your hood and what can happen and how they can support you. But last year or 2 years ago, how many of you have heard of asset-based community? Don't worry about it. I didn't know until a couple years ago either. But in essence, it's going in the community and finding out what people's talents and gifts and interests are, and how we can encourage them to use them. So when I first heard about this, I had the best drive home from Cincinnati to Columbus, thinking how the church can use this process. So think about your families in the weekend. They come to church and we don't see them all week because they can't get to a small group or childcare, therapy, whatever, right? So I'm driving home and I'm thinking, wow, this is one way that our small groups can come alongside the families that we already serve. Find out if they have a kitchen wall that needs to be painted and been looking like it for 20 years. Finding out how small groups can come and wrap around themselves around that family. And then COVID happened. The good thing about COVID, if anything, is the Zooms. And I thought, wow, our families can meet the small group, not necessarily get to that meeting, but they can meet them on a Zoom, and then community can happen when we're all face to face again. So those are the two things I want to encourage you. Charting the Life course is just person-centered planning. And basically, we're asking different tools, but I'm just going to show one and how I used it in the church. I teach a teen adult Sunday school class called Bodybuilders. And we took 3 of the tools because our goal was how can we get them connected to the church community to serve and just be connected. And these are teens, adults with IDD or specific special needs where sound is an issue or learning, whatever. So they can come to this class. what we did is we did the 3 things. We found out about who they are, what they like, what are their gifting. So that's one page. We talked about a trajectory. The goal is I want to be part of the church. And then the third one is the star, which, and I can send you, Beth, these forms. But the star is how are they connected to friends, who they're gifting, technology, community connections. And the last one is what they're eligible for, services they're available. So you can get an eyeball glance of who they are right now, and then help see what they're interested in. It's a great tool. Anyone can use it. It's free. I'll plug in the link in the chat. But I got really excited because think of you as a ministry person talking to a parent. What is your goal for your child? Now, they may say, we want them connected in the church, or they may say, I want them to have friends. It could be anything, right? So we're going to start the process to reach that goal. And then let's think of ways that we can reach that goal. So that trajectory is going up, it's not going down, it's separate. So I'm just really excited about it that you could teach an old dog new tricks. And I'm willing to come and share them online. Very simple. It is happening in Ohio and across the country. Charting the life course and lifecoursetools.com. And it's happening all over the place. And I'm doing webinars using it. But for the church, which is where my passion is, how do we get faith-based connection? And you guys learning what's new in the field, because these tools anyone can use, any age, any disability, or no disability. It's just planning towards something. We're all wanting to point people to Jesus. This is just one way you can do it, and it's easy. And I'm done. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you for sharing. No, I love this, and so I love that it's kind of thinking about the whole person and what are their gifts, and what are they eligible for, and it's kind of building on those relationships, because we all know ministry is all about relationships. So it's building on those relationships. Again, I love the community church partnership idea. Before I forget, I wanted to say that a couple things that have come up today. We've actually done roundtables on some of these topics. So a couple that came to mind just while we've been talking today. So Kristen's church is in a not a permanent space, right? It's a building that, what's the word for that? There's a word for that, whatever. When you,
I don't know, we're renting
a mobile church, whatever.
mobile.
Anyway, we did a disability ministry video roundtable on that. I can't remember what it was called, but it was basically like, how you can do disability ministry specifically, but in like when you are not permanently in the building. So that's something, if you want to look back, they're all on the Key Ministry website. We did one on ISPs, meaning like individualized spiritual plans. So the whole idea of kind of like an IEP, but like helping a child and a family like figure out what the child's understanding of God is, what their like specific goals to work towards on a Sunday morning. So we did one on that. So these are all really great topics that I think are of interest to ministry leaders. Deb has one more idea to share.
Just one more. If you go to Starfire Council, and I'll put that in the chat. Starfire Council was in Cincinnati, was once an adult day program. And then they got the idea about this asset base, finding what people's talents are, their desires. And instead of just, caring for adults with disabilities during the day, not seeing a whole lot of connection to community, they decided to change the way they look. They are no longer an adult day program, even though some of those are needed. But the cool thing is they use whatever money that they gathered before, and they're empowering parents who are impacted by disability to find ways to get connected with their immediate community. So it's basically providing a coaching, like, okay, so one mom said she wanted to do have a block party. She doesn't know any of her neighbors. So they coached her and, okay, so what are you going to need to do? Talk to people. What do you need to have that happen? And they ended up having a block party. But the coolest thing is it wasn't about her son with a disability. It was a focus on community. And this is something that we as a church can do, is say, okay, let's do something that will include people. So it's always about that full inclusion whenever possible. But just that idea of empowering families to say, I've always wanted to do this, and they support them. So I'm going to put that on there, you guys. They have some cool things happening on the Facebook page, and you will get tons of ideas from it. Okay, I'm done. I'm so sorry.
That's great. No, and what you're saying is, though, is like, that's an example of creating something that is for everyone, but it was created with disability in mind, but it benefits everyone. Thank you for sharing that. Catherine has put the link to the disability ministry video roundtable we did on intake forms and individualized spiritual plans. And for those of you who are watching the replay of this later, you can find it on the ministry website. And Michelle, you have your hand raised.
I do. So I was curious, Kristen, if you can share more about what you've talked about, asking the question, how inclusive do you want to be? Because I think especially for their church planners, that while they have heard of the concepts of needing to be more inclusive and needing to make sure they're avoiding creating barriers, I think if they still have not had a personal experience, they still just may not quite understand the depth and breadth of what might be needed. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about how that conversation went, right? So as far as how inclusive can we help them be?
Yeah, I kind of combated it with, because you're right, because you don't know, they don't know unless you know, unless you've been through it. And so I knew that I asked him what kinds of congregations has he been a part of, like specifically with disability in mind. And so he did mention there was a one woman who ran a disability ministry for 8 years. So I knew that he had some experience with it. And then I gave him very specific examples of ways that I personally had to advocate for someone's voice to be heard or physical presence to be there, that honestly, it turned me off from a church. And very quickly, I was very angry, respectfully angry. And so there are two examples. One was that there was a adult who, and I guess he's in his 40s, but the pastor of the church told me that this adult needed to be downstairs in the kids' space and was not allowed to worship with us in the sanctuary, is what they called it, because he kept speaking out while the pastor was talking. And so very specific, I know but I said, this was one example. How would you handle that? And then he gave me good answers. And then the second was that we had like a pop-up choir for a Christmas one year, and it was like 4 weeks, but this gentleman, who's 16 years old and didn't use words as his language, and he clapped out of rhythm and just smile on his face, didn't sing a lick, but he loved being up there. And he unfortunately experienced some kind of trigger and had a meltdown. And he was lovingly, incredibly compassionately taken by his godfather and the buddy that he was with on the stage into the back, just so that they were out of the way. But then after that happened, I was taken aside as the disability ministry director and told he is never to be on stage again. And so I asked the pastor, in this situation, what would you say? And it really was just very pointed, very specific times that I experienced a lack of compassion and a lack of inclusion. And so I wanted to know what his reaction was really what I was looking for. Like, did he react like all of us just did? Or is it like, oh, I've never experienced anything like that before? And so those were a couple of things. And we really did, it was a good, probably 45-minute conversation of just, let's go back and forth with what you've experienced, how compassionate. And then one of the things that I love that he immediately said was, if you're not talking about it from the stage where he was, then it doesn't mean anything, because leadership needs to be in charge of this, and like it needs to be challenging people to be inclusive, and he's very much talks about mental health from the pulpit and talks about disability from the pulpit. And his wife also is an aide in a special ed classroom, so that helps as well. But I mean, I think it's just having people understand. And that was huge for me, was, are you going to talk about this in front of people, or is it going to be a hush hush ministry? So
yeah, that's so important. And you're getting, I don't know if you can see, you're getting shout outs and
No.
celebratory, and Tori's sharing, yes and amen. It's got to come from leaders in the pulpit. Yeah. I love the examples that you gave in your conversations. And that's, I think, a really good tool for all of us. So thank you. That's great.
Can I say one more thing that just I remembered? In our staff meetings, that's another thing too that I appreciate about him, is that he gives me a voice for it. And so he'll say things like, Kristen, you're the expert in this, so I need you to tell me what's hindering, or you to tell me if this is not inclusive. And because he opened that door when I first came on staff, it was easier for me to say, I wouldn't do that, or we're not going to talk to him that way. So I think the more that he gave me a voice, the easier it is to just keep that conversation rolling.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's really important that somebody, whether it's you or somebody, has a seat at the table where decisions are being made. And, and I'm glad that he sees you as an excellent resource. That's really important. Greg is sharing in the chat that it's all about normalizing things that have made many people uncomfortable for a while now. Yeah, so you clearly have a good line of communication open with your leadership, and that's really great. All right, I'm looking around. Anybody else have thoughts, questions? Diana, your hand is raised. Diana's going to be at IFL.
I can't come.
Oh, I thought you were coming.
I was going to, but we've had some family issues come up. So
okay, never mind. Well, I will tell you, it was snowing here yesterday.
Well, and we were up in Illinois for a week, and we had snow there too. So anyways, I was gonna just take my little ham down here since I'm here. But I just wanted to just say how valuable all this stuff is that I'm hearing from Kristen and Deb, and it's always so good to get excited about different things. And just kind of wanted to piggyback and reiterate, I have talked to churches that have, even our church, but sometimes it's other churches that come to me in the San Antonio, Texas area about church plants and things. And I just reiterate everything that you were saying. And one of the things too is I've had people say, well, we don't have anybody. We're so small. We don't have anyone with any disabilities. And I just want to say, for anyone who's going off into that, I tell them immediately, you will don't, and you need to go after them. So I really liked all those comments, because it's not like you just have this church plant and you open the door and then say, well, gosh, nobody came in with any disabilities. We're ready, but we don't have anyone. So Deb, I love all of that, and the community resources. So just say thank you. And I agree 100%.
Yeah. And also, just because you don't see a wheelchair doesn't mean there's not people with disabilities. And that's obviously a huge part of what Key Ministry is all about, is, talking about the hidden disabilities and mental health conditions too.
Right. And I've also found that people are afraid sometimes that, even at our large church with a big, ministry that's a special needs ministry, they'll try to sneak their kiddo off without saying anything to anybody. And then there's the meltdown. And then so you can come alongside and go, oh my gosh, I'm sorry you didn't realize, but you're loved here, you're welcomed here. And I think with the church plants, it could be the same thing. Don't wait for that meltdown.
Yeah.
As it can happen.
Barb, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so I've never been part of a church plant, but when we started our ministry at our church, for first couple of years, I think that the rest of the children's ministry and youth ministries kind of looked at the special needs ministry volunteers as the only people that needed to get trained about disability awareness and positive behavior support. And if there was any issue at all, they were like making a beeline to us. And it took us a while to change that culture to say this is for all of us to know. So I think a really good thing to do if you're starting a church is to start with the mindset that we're all going to get disability awareness. We're all going to learn positive behavior support. Yes, there may be a disability ministry that can go and help certain people or certain situations, but this inclusion means including the whole staff and the whole volunteer team too.
Right. Yes, that's so true, Barb. And I sometimes say, like, disability ministry is not the job of the special needs ministry director.
Right.
It's everybody's job, right?
Right.
So let's see. Greg, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit. So You Belong is a church plant in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and we started this in 2021. Our focus really centers around a sense of belonging, which, when we talk about inclusion and belonging, for us, belonging is even one step further, and it allows us to expand farther beyond just focusing on folks with disabilities to thinking about anyone that's felt a sense of a lack of belonging in some capacity. And so a lot of our focus has become around what we call in our Better Together program of how do we just bring people with and without disabilities together to do and be church in whatever way that looks like. And so we talk about, the individual spiritual plans. The ISP is normalizing that for everybody, and everybody has one of those in place, and what that looks like across the board. How do we just create programs in a way that, every single person is going to find it intriguing and life-giving, but having it set so that you can be flexible in different ways. And so a lot of what we talk about there is just helping everybody find that deep sense of belonging. And we have found some really unique individuals with unique stories along the way as we've kind of engulfed this community in some beautiful ways. So it's looking at the world totally differently in that way. And part of our vision is how do we help transform our whole community? So creating those resources that other businesses and churches can use and start thinking about things through that lens. And, it'd be a lot easier if we all had someone to walk with and constantly be trying to see it through their eyes. And so how do we create those opportunities to just bring people together and build community?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah. And this, like, some of what you said reminds me so much of Lamar Hardwick's book, Disability in the Church, because he does have a whole section there. And, like, if you've ever talked with Amberly Brown, like, just the whole idea of just kind of flipping it, flipping our whole mindset. Yeah, I love it. Okay. Back to the individualized spiritual plan. I'm almost positive when we did that roundtable before, we talked about, like, what a great thing it would be for all of children's ministry, like not just your students with disabilities, but for everybody. So that's another example of, how it can benefit everybody. Michelle, were you waving at me, or were you raising your hand?
Yes, all of the above. So
Okay.
I actually created what I called an individualized spiritual growth plan, kind of along the same lines, but it's for everyone, even adults. Where are you at in your spiritual journey, and what are some goals for this year, and who are your accountability partners, and who are you mentoring with? So, to be able to give that to everyone, so you're not singling out, right, those families with disability. So yeah, I think it's an amazing tool.
I love it. You're getting
Opportunity.
Tori sending you some celebratory confetti from her square over there. Catherine, I might be putting you on the spot, and you can pass if you want, but do you want to talk about any of the, so in your role as mental health ministry director, do you want to talk about maybe some things that churches can be thinking about if they are doing a church plant, beginning with the, like, mental health ministry in mind?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think your point that you made a little while ago just about the signage is one simple thing that churches can automatically do to make sure that people, when they walk into a new space. I mean, I think most of us probably feel a little bit of anxiety when it's something brand new and we don't know anybody there. And so just, to give that reassurance of you can figure out where you need to go, then that can be a huge thing for somebody who I mean, I personally have social anxiety. I mean, I don't mind asking people for directions if I need them, but but there are times when I really don't want to have to reach out and talk to somebody. And so, for people where that is something that might keep them from ever coming in your door or coming back in your door, that's just a very simple thing that anybody can do. A couple things that we talk about, like with kids, and Beth, you mentioned this earlier, but having a visual schedule for kids, especially if they're used to having that sort of thing at school, where they know what the order of things is going to be, it can just help give them like that little bit of structure that helps them to modulate their own behavior. And really, it's not that different for adults. Maybe you don't need to have like the color-coded schedule, published on the wall. But, if everybody.
But I do. I like my color-coded schedule. So don't mock my color-coded schedule.
Well, I mean, I think most people, some people really chafe under structure, but I mean, if you're coming to a group or, an event at church, there is absolutely an order of how things are going to go. Mm-hmm. And so, I think most people benefit at least a little bit, whatever the age is, from knowing ahead of time, if you can, what that's going to be. So, I mean, those are two simple things right there. And then, there's lots of tools. There's lots of organizations that do things like, they take surveys of communities and, they try to understand like what the overall health needs are of the community. One that comes to mind, and this isn't necessarily just mental health, but it's like lots of different measures of health and poverty and that sort of thing, is casey.org, CASEY.org. I mean, they have so much information that you can glean about every single zip code in the country. It's kind of staggering and kind of, a little creepy, but organizations like that, or, local community support organizations also have a lot of information about, okay, how many people in your area, are below the poverty line, or, like how many, let's just take that one. You can guarantee when people are living below the poverty line, they have lots of needs that are tangible, practical things. Like, transportation is probably an issue. If you can solve somebody's transportation issue or help come alongside them, that can reduce life stresses that can easily spiral into, other things in life that just go out of control. So just a little out of the box thinking with, let's see, again, like what, Deb mentioned, that the asset-based community, well, it's similar kind of idea, what are the needs in the community? How can we come alongside to, help meet some of those needs?
Can you
the last thing I'd throw out is, you go ahead.
No, I'll go ahead and finish and then I'll.
Okay. Last thing I was just going to say that is simple is, start a mental health Grace Alliance group, a Fresh Hope group. NAMI has NAMI FaithNet groups. All these groups have tools to go ahead and get you started. You don't have to create anything new. They have curriculum that you can follow. They're all excellent resources. I haven't looked at a long time, but Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance used to have groups as well. They had like a whole booklet of how you get started, how you set up a 501c3 if you want to go to that point. And anyway, the tools are already out there. You don't have to recreate the wheel, but you doing these little subtle, quiet things, or even like Bay Pres has, Alcoholics Anonymous groups that use their space, or other, letting other groups use your space for mental health related things absolutely sends a message that, you get it, you understand that people do have these struggles.
Yeah, that's good. Can you please spell out the website again, the Casey website? Could you spell that out for us?
Yeah.
Please?
I'll put it in the chat, but it's CASEY.org.
CASEY.org. Okay, thank you. And then Victoria's sharing a transportation solution idea. So get out your pens and paper and write this one down. www.golou.org. That's GOLOU.org. Deb is sharing Asset-Based Community Building, great book, The Abundant Community by John McKnight and Peter Block. And then again, Catherine shared CASEY.org. All right. Good stuff, people. Oh, I know. Remember when I said I forgot something and I couldn't think of what it was? I remembered it. So Kristen, you commented on, you have a tab on your website that lets people know that you're doing whatever, you're a welcoming church, doing disability ministry. So I just want to, I want to ask you more about that, but also this is, again, a topic that we've covered in roundtables before. So can you tell us again what's on that tab of the website and how you have it listed?
Yeah, it's super simple because we intentionally didn't want it to be its separate entity of thing. We wanted it more inclusive. And so it's a very simple, how can we help you? Like, so but instead of having it like specifically under kids or, it wasn't, we have a tab that's separate for it that just says disability ministry. And that way, anyone who's going on our website or searching it know that we're a disability friendly church. And so it's a very simple contact Kristen, what can we learn about you kind of thing. Just so that it's open-ended. I just want to know what you need and how can we help, So we kept it very simple intentionally so that it wasn't something that's like, oh, we offer this, 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 and this. It's more, no, we just want to include your family.
Got it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
And finding pictures appropriate for it was also a really big deal.
Yes.
Was looking through of ways to make sure that it was inclusive of lots of things.
Can I say something else, Beth?
Yeah.
So I know I've said in these forums before that my church does not have like an official disability ministry or mental health ministry, but we've just been really blessed with a lot of people that have a heart for all people. And so, things that we've done have just been much more organic in nature than anything that was like real intentional. We were initially a church plant, but we're like 35 years old now. But we recently, in the last, actually like the week after I joined Key Ministry, pretty much our whole staff left. And we've had an intentional interim pastor ever since. And I mean, we just compressed in terms of like the number of people there. So in some ways it is like being part of a church plant because we were left with many fewer volunteers than all of the COVID stuff and that kind of thing. But I think, if you can really tap into helping people understand that, it's about valuing every life that's there, and we all need support in some kind of way. And here's an example. There's this lovely woman named Teddy who used to come to our church. She has Down syndrome. She lives in a group home nearby. Because of COVID, we haven't, as far as I know, been able to come up with a solution for her to get there regularly. But she would comment loudly every Sunday throughout the service, her love of Jesus. And I think some people found that distracting, but other people I know, over time, realized that she has a genuine love for the Lord and her ministry is vibrant. She became a greeter, and she would sometimes interrupt the pastor, but our current pastor, his solution has been when she comes up, he just holds her hand and she stands with them. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. She's able to express what she needs to. And it's just a beautiful picture of the love that Christ has for every one of us. So we'll probably need to edit out her name, and I'm sorry for saying it. But anyway, I just, I think about her so much because she's such an incredible witness for Christ. And we deprive the body of Christ of just how profound God can work in the lives of somebody that the world maybe doesn't value very much.
Amen.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wow, that almost seems like the perfect place to end. But Kristen, do you have any last thoughts, words of advice, problems that you encountered, or anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Not specifically, but I mean, I'm loving this, and thank you for letting me be a part of it. And I'm here all the time if you have any questions or anything that come up.
Great, thank you. So just as a reminder to everybody, we do have a topical roundtable, so a disability ministry video roundtable on a specific topic on the third Wednesday of each month. So we'll be doing this again in May, new topic. But we also do an idea share on the first Monday of each month at noon Eastern time. Bright and early for our California friends that join us. But so our next one will be May 2nd. And if you have not joined us before, they're a huge blessing for me, I can tell you that. And I'm looking at you, Meekins, and some others like this. We're like our own support group, but everybody's welcome to join. We don't go in with a specific topic in mind. This started started in March of 2020, and we actually met weekly for a long time. And through that is how many of us made it through, and ministries have changed and grown because of the way we have shared ideas and encouraged each other. So I do invite you to join us first Monday of every month at noon Eastern. Once you sign up once, you get the link sent to you every single month. So, and again, if you're watching this live, IFL 2022, so Inclusion Fusion Live, which is Key Ministries National Disability Ministry Conference, is happening next weekend, so April 29th and 30th of 2022. Registration is still open. If you're trying to get there, but maybe your church isn't paying your way or whatever, let me know. We do have a few more scholarships available. But you can go to keyministry.org and click on IFL 2022. A lot of you will be there, and it'll be fun to get together in person. So thank you again. Thank you, Kristen, for sharing your expertise. Thank you, everybody, for participating, and we will see you next time.